Can you talk about how you got involved in this family business and what this family business means to you?
Yeah, so growing up, I was always around the farm. Even before I could work, my dad would bring me to work sometimes if my mom couldn't watch me, and I would sit in the egg room and see everything going on, and he would give me little things to do, like put some eggs in some packages, keep me busy. Um, and then as I grew up, I wasn't very interested when I got to around college age. I went away to school, and then I got a job doing software development in Wisconsin, and I did that for about 3 years, and then after a few years of doing that, I don't know, I wanted to move back home, and I took more of an interest in the business at the time. I guess just getting real work experience out in the world, I kind of got a better sense of what I wanted to do, and it ended up being coming back to work with my family. That was in 2018, so I've been back with my family for 7 years now.
Awesome.
Yeah, and it's been a wild ride.
Yeah, that's kind of similar path of kind of me. Like, it's been 16 years of Jordan Energy, but being around it from the get go in like high school and earlier than that, and then stepping away to find my way in some type of manner, and then coming back later. Um, Obviously, it's been around. I mean, how long exactly has Puglisi Egg Farm been around?
So we started in like the late 1940s. That's when my grandfather bought this property. Like before that, he used to live in New York City, and his brother owned the property next door that we own now. And he had some chickens, so my grandfather would come down here, get eggs, and bring them back to the city and sell them door to door, like in his spare time after work or on the weekends, whatever. And then over time, he decided to buy this property and get his own chickens and produce his own eggs to make his own business. And then from there, it just kind of slowly grew. They say at some point in this, I think it was the 60s, things got tough. There was a lot of competition with cheaper eggs coming in from like down south. A lot of farms were scaling up, and my grandfather thought about giving it up. And he actually had an interview set up to go into the city to interview to be a carpenter. He was originally a carpenter, so he was going to go get a carpentry job in the city again. And then before he went, my grandmother had a conversation with him, and she just said, "I don't think this is what you want to do." And he said, "Yeah, you're right." And then they just kind of doubled down and stuck with it, and worked out. And over the years, it just slowly grew until today.
Yeah. And I mean, you're being back for 7 years, but it's been a part of your whole life. What are some of the core values that you've heard and then seen within these 7 years of the farm that have proved to be a very successful operation here?
Yeah, honesty was always the biggest one. My grandfather was very big on honesty. He would point out. He had a story that he told. So when his family moved here from Italy, they had to borrow money from his uncle or something like that, because they didn't have much. And then shortly after they moved, his father passed away, and he never paid back his uncle. And then my grandfather said, he felt like his uncle always had a grudge against him for that because he never got his money. So when he was in his teenage years and he started working, he told him, "I'll pay you back." So he worked hard and paid him, a little bit at a time. Eventually, he paid him back, and he just said he thought that was the right thing to do. It was, his integrity, and that was a big lesson of like you're honest and you do what's right. So he didn't just leave it and say, "Oh, well, that wasn't me who borrowed the money. It was my dad." No, it was a family thing, and he had to make it right. So we just carry that into business, like once in a while things don't go right, and you lose money on something or whatever, and maybe somebody doesn't treat you the right way, but at the end of the day you got to sit down and think, what's right, who do I have to pay to get things correct, and you move on. So yeah, that's the biggest one.
Yeah, that theme of like honesty and trust kind of like go hand in hand, right? And I was thinking about this on the way here. This like tagline of "rooted in trust" on the hat, and within our company, over half the people that work for us, I've known my whole life, and there is that like layer of trust that's built within those dynamics. I might have overheard there's like I mean over 100 people that are in this
Yeah, so
facility.
between here and our Delaware facility, like overall, we have about 100 people working for us.
How have you seen that kind of foundational trust within the family filter through the organization as a whole?
I mean, we have a lot of people who've been around for longer than I've been alive.
Yeah.
You know, our mechanic has worked with us since he was 16, and so he's been here for over 30 years. Our assistant plant manager's been with us since the 80s, so same thing, over 30 years. Um, a lot of the core people have stuck around, and you know, you got to treat everybody like family and show them the respect and the trust that you show your family members to incentivize them to stay.
How have you felt the connection of these eggs or food with the consumer? Is there anything that you almost wish the consumer would like have an insight to from yourself as a farmer when they do consume this food?
Yeah, eggs is kind of a confusing topic these days because you have so many different specialties. It's not like you go to the store and you just have white eggs or brown eggs. You have cage-free white, cage-free brown, free-range white, free-range brown, organic, so pasture-raised, and then you have all different brands that are the same standard, but it's just their own branding, and like the egg aisle is huge, right? So I think, most people go to the store and they don't really know what they're consuming a lot of the time. A lot of people are value buyers, or a lot of people just go buy what their friends tell them to buy, right? There's just so much about eggs behind the scenes that people don't know. It's like I wish everybody could just see the whole thing, but it's so much to take in that it's not realistic, right? You have a lot of people who are more interested in buying eggs from like their neighbor who has 10 or 15 chickens in his backyard, or somebody down the street who has 100 chickens. But from our standpoint and our viewpoint, I think that's great if you want to have some chickens in your backyard and produce your own eggs and sell them to your neighbors. Go for it. But I think the product that we have is much more food safe. It's definitely a lot more regulated, and overall, it's going to be safer for the consumer.
Yeah. Yeah, that hits home. I had 4 chickens in San Diego back in the day, and people would come over. Some of them would be feeding them meat, and feeding them all types of things. I'm like, oh, you can't do that. But yeah, I loved having them, and then the fresh eggs the day that they come out is pretty wild.
Yeah, so I think we first met Bill because Farm Credit was recommending Jordan Energy, or brought it up as some kind of partnership, or I don't know what the deal was. So my dad or somebody in my family gave him a call, and he met with my dad and my uncles and myself at that first visit, and they had an immediate bond over the Italian heritage and all of that. And my dad and my uncles love talking to people about their Italian heritage, so it was an immediate friendship. And they had talked to other people about doing solar for years. It was like every 5 years someone would come and say, oh, we could do a solar project for you, and like they never really pulled the trigger, whether it was they didn't feel like they fully trusted the person, or I don't know, the pricing wasn't right, or the timing just wasn't right. But when Bill came, they felt like he was a friend right away, and I think they had no reservations moving forward with the project with Jordan Energy. So we did that first project, and we hit a few hiccups, but and at the end of the day, you guys pulled through and made everything work, and we got our first project up in 2022, and now we have our second project done, our third project coming up this year, and a fourth on the way. So we're really happy to be working with you guys and continue the partnership.
In terms of this, kind of vertical of eggs, right? Because we work with all different types of farmers. You have a decent energy consumption within, the farm. How have you seen the solar impact that electricity bill and the dynamic with it?
Yeah, so the one I've seen the impact really is the first one. The second one just turned on a month ago, so we're still waiting to see the results of it. But this first one, I mean, yeah, the bill has been significantly reduced. The generation is right on target with what we expected, and anytime we've had problems, they've been fixed right away, so we don't really lose much generation. Um, and the state incentives have been great. It's like a monthly check that just keeps coming in, and um, yeah, it's been really great.
Yeah, we're navigating some trying times in that topic of state incentives, and trying to advocate for um, you know the value within the farming industry of energy independence that solar
Hmm.
can provide. If there was any type of kind of insight into what those incentives did for the finances of this solar project, what would that be? Like, did
Hmm.
it kind of shift the perspective, and that was like your moving forward point? How did the incentives really impact your decision?
Oh yeah, so the state incentives for us was a big impact because at the time they were going to lower the amount, and so it was basically like lock it in now and get the good state incentives before we lose it. Um, and that was one of the big reasons we signed originally with you guys. Um, but that state incentive, I mean, yeah, it makes the whole thing work. Um, I don't even I don't even know if we did a grant for that project,
We didn't. We just used the state incentive.
right? I don't think the grant was around yet.
Yeah,
It was the next year.
Yep.
Yeah, so the state incentive was really the big mover that got us to go forward with it, because otherwise the upfront cost was significant,
Yeah.
and the payoff time period was a lot longer. But those incentives really made it cash flow fast, and it was a no brainer.
Mhm.
You know.
One of the topics that we've kind of brought into the limelight in terms of solar, it's on your roof for 25 plus years, right? And within farming, there's a generational aspect of kind of empowering the younger generation to join on board, and we've seen that with your farm without a doubt.
Mhm.
Do you feel like the pulse of the younger generation with these solar topics was one that invoked a desire to have not just solar but be a part of the family business because they saw the financial projections of what solar could provide?
I guess my generation's view on the solar was probably most influenced just by our upbringing. In school, the past whatever 20 years, or when we were going through school, my generation, a lot of the talk was about global warming and reducing carbon footprint and that sort of thing, renewable energy. So I think by the time I got on board and we were thinking about doing the solar, the big draw was, this checks all the boxes of it's renewable energy, it's gonna work financially, and it just feels like the right thing to do on all fronts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Funny, like I don't want to say funny, but like a unique term that I've been kind of thinking over is this idea of for a farmer to be able to capture the sun and produce something with it turns into them being considered a sun farmer in some type of way. What would that classification mean to you if I was wanting to call you a sun
A
farmer?
sun farmer.
Yeah.
I think I'll always identify as an egg farmer, but maybe a part-time sun farmer.
That's awesome. Let me see what other questions I have. Oh, I like this one. Obviously, I have a huge respect for all different types of farming because there's just a vast knowledge of so many different dynamics, and the lifestyle is one that not a lot of people can fully understand unless they're in it.
Mhm.
I mean, it's hard to take vacations in a lot of ways. If,
Mhm.
it's just you on the farm. If you could boil a key attribute of what it takes to be a farmer to one thing, what would you say is a attribute that is proven to be successful for not just you but your family?
Probably grit. You need to be a certain type of person that wants to just keep going no matter what. there's always setbacks. There's so many different responsibilities, and they're so broad that you can't know all the details of everything, but you have to make sure everything keeps moving forward at the end of the day. I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't know, but realize about farming operations is with the scale that a lot of people operate at now, there's just so much that falls under the belt of the person running the farm that their knowledge has to be so broad. It's just very difficult to keep it all together. um, so really, yeah, that grit to just keep going and solve problems every day and move on and is the most important thing. Because yeah, if you just take a minute and kind of give up, you're not going to catch up, and you're just not going to make it. You have to be a consistent worker.
You have a very level head, I would say, and I don't know your siblings, your cousins as well as I know you, but it'd be interesting to hear your perspective of how the teamwork of the next generation is going, because you grew up with your dad and two uncles all working together, and several of your cousins and brothers are in the business. How's that working?
Yeah, I would say we're still finding our way with our relationship and how we make our decisions. The transition has been pretty long from the handoff from my uncles and my dad to us, but at this point it's mostly been handed off, and we're the ones making a lot of the day-to-day decisions. So, we've hit patches where someone does something and we all kind of turn around and say, hey, why didn't you ask us?
Yeah.
So we've hit some patches where we've kind of had to figure out, all right, where's the line of what we need to get together on and discuss, and what needs to just get delegated and would trust you to handle it type of deal. But we're always working on it. We always acknowledge that we need to meet more. It's just hard to find the time to meet. But we do try to prioritize. If we can't actually meet in person, at least, we leverage the technology we have today. We start a group text and say, hey, I don't have time to meet, but I just want to throw this on your radar and say, we have this thing going on. Let me know what you think about it. And I think that's worked out really well for us. Because a lot of times we're just trying to, we all wear a lot of hats and we're moving around too much. It's hard to get that a 1 hour block of time where everybody can sit down and talk about something. But we do it. But most of the time we're communicating through text or finding each other throughout the day and saying, oh, hey, what do you think about this? Or, what do you think about this other thing?
Yeah. When you were talking about that, my mind went to balance and the family dynamics. Is my sister and myself are involved in the family, and my mom's very involved on the nonprofit side that we have, Lecture of the Sun. Are there any key insights that you have in terms to living a healthy family work life balance?
That's probably the hardest part of it. I think. I don't know. I think we struggle with it sometimes. Everybody must struggle with it because it's hard to work with somebody all day and then a holiday comes up and you still want to see them because you just saw them at work yesterday. I think just really managing that work relationship and making sure that you're not letting that spill over into the personal relationship. Keeping things separate, knowing that a work disagreement doesn't mean a personal disagreement. And just reinforcing with yourself that these things are different, and your personal relationship shouldn't be affected by anything that's going on in the workplace. But you should also make sure that your workplace relationship is strong and secure. And the communication part that I said is probably the biggest thing. I think I've noticed when we communicate well is probably when we work the best together and we're the most happy with each other. When that communication falls apart for some amount of time because we're too busy or we just don't prioritize it, that's when small resentments start to build and people get upset, and then we have to reconvene and talk through things and get back to a stable baseline.
Well, this is having me inspired, definitely. You know, the kind of last question that I'll put out there is something that I feel great about, um, but I know a lot of people in different circles that I'm attached to kind of question. And yeah, there is a big fear because a lot of family farms are kind of deciding to wrap up shop, and bigger kind of conglomerates are kind of taking over. Um, what's your perspective on the future of farming? And yeah, obviously this is the solar coming in side, but like how can solar play a role in that? So I guess the question is almost like twofold.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's harder than ever probably to run a small farm. Um, I've seen people be successful with all different types and sizes of farming businesses, though. I know it's possible. It's just a matter of adapting to the situation and how you need to keep things going. There's constantly pressures and uh, pushing against us that make things more difficult. Right now in Delaware, they're reassessing our property taxes. And there's a lot of family farms that are concerned because they're looking at their bills possibly going up significantly. And they're already dealing with other pricing pressures with, crops being down right now and fertilizer being up. So a lot of these crop farmers are understandably concerned. And, we're actually in the middle of lobbying with the state of Delaware with a new property tax bill to provide relief for farmers. But it just takes a strong sense of community. In Delaware, it works really well because the Delaware Farm Bureau is a very strong organization. All of the members know each other and are willing to support each other. We started operating in Delaware in 2008, and almost immediately the Farm Bureau became such a strong partner with us and helped us with some of the issues we were dealing with. So farmers coming together and supporting their local Farm Bureau organization or their local cooperatives and kind of sharing the burden of what's going on or helping each other out is really how these small farms are going to stick around and be successful, I think.
I have one more question that came to my mind at the end of what you
Yeah.
were saying. A program that I pushed Jordan Energy to instill is to provide each one of our employees with a CSA. Because I've seen, I've worked farmers markets before, but I've seen like CSAs being very beneficial to the farmer, even more so than farmers markets. So I kind of want to like somehow like push other companies to see this as a benefit that employees really appreciate because they're going to get a regular basis of food that's fresh, and many of them will have eggs in the basket of this CSA. Yeah, what would you say is the best way to support Puglisi or other farms? Like, do you see CSAs as being prominent in that? Do you see that being something that could be beneficial for a larger company?
I'm not too familiar with CSAs, so I don't know what exactly, how are they usually set up.
The way they work is you buy a share, so every week it's a smaller farm usually.
Okay.
So you say, I'm going to assume some of the farmer's risk.
By putting a full payment at the beginning of the season.
You put a full payment at the beginning of the season, and then you get a week's produce. Whatever's grown on the farm, gets divvied up.
Okay.
So we did it because, one, it's healthy, fresh food, and two, it establishes some more direct link to a farmer or farmers. And
so is it usually one farm that you work with, or is it a group of farmers that kind of pool their...
Yeah, so there's different options. Like I had a CSA program in San Diego that was like a group of farms that kind of collected in one conglomerate, but the majority of the ones that we're doing is with one farm.
Yeah, I think programs like that are what small farms need. Once you get to a certain size, it's not like for us. It wouldn't work. We're selling to a lot of large grocers.
We went to a deli, Daisy's, says we'd like to get Puglisi's eggs. The woman that started that worked at the Italian deli that you guys do supply. That we've usually gone there, but we mixed it up this time. She'd worked there 21 years.
Uh-huh.
But
Her husband was funny. He's like, "Oh, they got the best sex."
I have to jump to a call, so
Okay.
you guys can continue on. I know that Stephen, you might want to do a little drone if you let him. I don't know if the weather permits, or at least take
Yeah, it's kind of a bad
a
day.
couple of your family pictures. But I would and my part in expressing our gratitude for how great it's been to work with.
Mhm.
I mean, that was very genuine. Sitting with your uncles and your dad and just talking about the family history.
Mhm.
That's part of why we do what we do. We want to build the kind of relationship that we really treasure.
Mhm.
That you just had a baby boy, Mary Beth was so thrilled. We're all so thrilled for you. So we appreciate the trust you put in us to do high quality solar.
Mhm.
And you've been really great to work with. So just a message of gratitude from me as we move into transition. I'm getting older. I'm an older generation. We'll do the handoff eventually, right?
We feel the same way. That's why we keep doing more projects with you.
I'm gonna swing over to the car,
yeah.
and you guys can continue.
You have the
keys?
Yeah, I got the keys for you.
So I'll say goodbye. I hope the clothes that maybe that fit outfit.
I'm sure. I'm sure they
Little
will.
Kenneth, they'll get a chance to meet him in person one of these days soon.
Yeah, and I want to be mindful of your time too. So I think the only last.
Molto piacere.
Sorry, I just
No,
wanted
don't be sorry.
Beautiful family. Oh, thank you. You
Okay,
guys,
no problem.
we love working with family farms. My mom's.
I'm ready.
I just love hearing him in the background always. He never stops talking. Sometimes the issue. Yeah, I think the last topic gets to this desire within family business. I know you just had a child, and it's I find it's most meaningful when you work within your own business or your family business. Obviously, there's the most risk, right? Which you talked about grit as a farmer. I think it's it amplifies it even more when it's your own. And in having this this new child, how have you had any like internal kind of like dialogue with yourself about, oh, I'd want my kid one day to get involved in this? And
So growing up, I guess there was always a pull for me to work on a farm as I was growing up, and I was around it, but I never felt pressured by my parents to be a part of it. They left it up to me whether I wanted to do it or not, and which I think is the right thing to do. I wouldn't want to push my son into being a part of it, but at the same time, I mean, yeah, if I'm happy with what I'm doing and I can show him that he can live a good life and be happy and fulfilled doing the same thing, I think that would be great. I know my family's always thinking about the next generation. We're still kind of in the middle of a transition to my generation. We're at the tail end of it, but I know, at least in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about what can we do to keep this successful so it can make it to the next generation. I don't want to be the generation that fails, and I want my kids and my cousin's kids and my brother's kids to have something that they can take on and move forward with when I'm done.
Yeah, that was something that Joe Colas, my dad's cousin, was talking about. Is they have these yearly meetings where it's like a legacy planning, and they talk about not just 5-10 years, but even 50 years,
right,
and planning for that down the line. And I really appreciate that perspective of wanting your kid to have that choice, just like you had that choice. But there is that deep rooted desire to cultivate that within the family.
Yeah, and even with a lot of the partnerships we have with some of our suppliers, like we partner with other farms out in Pennsylvania and one in South Jersey, and we buy their eggs and bring them here to process them. A lot of those guys we've been working with for 20, 30 years. I mean, one guy we worked with his uncle, and then his uncle sold the farm to him, and he's been working it, and we've been buying his eggs for 15 or 20 years now, and he's got sons who are college age, and he wants to pass it on to them eventually. And we have another farmer we worked with just as long, and he's already passed it on to his son, who's my age. So now I went from working with him to working with his son directly. And every time, we bring in new people and start a new partnership, we just let them know that that's what we value. We're not looking for a partner for the next 2 or 3 years to work with. We want someone who's going to work with us until the next generation. Right?
Yeah.
The consistent relationships that don't change are the ones that we value the most.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what's the best way to eat eggs?
I like them scrambled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also scrambled. I've never really. I mean, I like over easy too, but I think scrambled's the best way to do it for quantity.
Mm-hmm. I scramble them and mix them in a bowl with some rice or veggies, or an omelet. That's my favorite.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking the time, really. And one of the things that came to me during this was so much of the process through the years of Jordan Energy has been my dad really connecting with the older farmers, and this dynamic too of the younger generation kind of coming into this transition of decision making and whatnot. And yeah, the best ways to connect with. You're in your 30s, 40s, I'm assuming.
I'm 32.
32, yeah.
Yeah.
And what's the best way to connect with that age group? And yeah, I definitely see the beauty of social media and all that, but know that there's the highlights you can do on social media that kind of that's not really our vibe or our style. It's more the authentic conversations that we appreciate and want to get out there for people to be oh, this is it just feels not scripted and more true. So definitely appreciate it. Taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for coming out.
Yeah.